Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving deep into a topic that is completely reshaping how medical professionals view long-term wellness. We're going to explore the hidden biological link between metabolic health and cancer to uncover exactly why proactive, preventative cancer screening isn't just a good idea anymore, it's an absolute necessity in our high-sugar world. We've got some truly groundbreaking science to cover, so let's get right to it. Okay, let's dive into this. What is the leading cause of death for individuals with type 2 diabetes? Now, if you had asked most doctors or patients this just 10 years ago, the answer would have been unanimous, right? Heart disease, heart attacks, or strokes. We have literally spent decades building our entire medical understanding around that assumption. But the data has completely shifted. The stark reality is that cancer has quietly overtaken heart disease as the #1 killer in type 2 diabetics. Now, you might be wondering, why is this happening? Well, ironically, it's because modern medicine has become so incredibly effective at managing blood pressure and cholesterol. Because we're keeping patients safe from heart attacks, they're actually living long enough with elevated blood sugars for cancer to emerge as the primary threat. So here's our roadmap for the explainer today. 1. The diabetes-cancer connection. 2. How insulin feeds tumors. 3. Cancer as an evolutionary disease. 4. The urgent need for screening. 5. Breakthroughs in early detection. And 6. Taking control of your risk.
Starting right off with Section 1, the diabetes-cancer connection.
Recent epidemiological data, specifically a massive 2026 review in diabetes care, has brought this connection into incredibly sharp focus. And guys, we're not talking about a tiny negligible bump in risk here. For individuals with diabetes, the risk of developing pancreatic cancer is multiplied by 2.3 times. Liver cancer risk is multiplied by 1.8 times, which is heavily driven by fatty liver disease and chronic inflammation. These aren't just minor upticks, these are massive hazard ratios that absolutely demand our attention. And the overall cancer burden is especially strong in women. Get this, for diabetic women, the risk of developing endometrial cancer, which is cancer of the lining of the womb, is literally doubled. That's a 2 times multiplier simply because of prolonged elevated blood sugar and the resulting metabolic changes. Which brings us to a really crucial clinical window. Research from a landmark 2026 prospective study confirms that new-onset diabetes in adults over the age of 50 carries a 0.5 to 1% chance of a pancreatic cancer diagnosis within just 3 years. Because of this, researchers are no longer viewing late-in-life diabetes purely as a metabolic issue. They're looking at it like a loud, flashing alarm bell, a critical window for early cancer detection, proving exactly why getting screened is a medical necessity, for sure. Let's move to Section 2, how insulin feeds tumors. So we've looked at the macro population statistics, but let's shift down to the microcellular level to understand exactly why this happens. How does high blood sugar actually translate to a tumor? The sources identify 3 primary biological drivers. First step is hyperinsulinaemia. Basically, when you consume excess carbs, your body pumps out insulin, and chronically elevated insulin acts as a super potent growth signal for cells. Second is chronic inflammation, which creates an environment that basically begs for tumor initiation. And third, hyperglycaemia, or high blood sugar. Cancer cells actively feed on glucose through something called the Warburg effect. To use a really vivid analogy from our sources, having chronically high insulin and blood sugar is quite literally like throwing compost onto a cancer. It actively fertilizes and accelerates the growth. Now for Section 3, cancer as an evolutionary disease. And this brilliantly illustrates a major paradigm shift in how we understand cancer development. For decades, we were taught that cancer was just a random string of bad genetic luck, the somatic mutation theory. But now, we have the modern evolutionary paradigm. We realize it's not just random. Chronic sublethal damage to your cells, like that constant inflammation and high insulin we just talked about, creates an environment where cells literally have to mutate to survive. It is an evolutionary selection pressure. This quote hits the nail on the head. Cancer behaves much like an invasive species. Think about it. It acts like a single-celled organism desperately fighting for survival in the harsh, inflamed environment of a metabolically unhealthy body. Your body's natural defenses and immune system are constantly trying to wipe out these microscopic threats. But when you have chronic inflammation, those defenses get suppressed, and that allows the invasive species to take root. This leads right into Section 4, the urgent need for screening. Because cancer thrives in these hidden metabolic conditions, proactive screening isn't just nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. But we do have a major hurdle. Diabetic patients are actually 10 to 15% less likely to attend cancer screenings. Now, it is incredibly important to point out that this drop-off is not a failure on the patient's part. It's the result of genuine medical overwhelm. I mean, when you're managing daily blood sugar checks, multiple medications, diet restrictions, and constant doctor visits, getting a kit in the mail for a colonoscopy or a mammogram just feels like one more heavy burden. But because of this overwhelm, we have to reframe screening from being a chore to being an absolute necessity for survival. The crucial point to understand here is that micrometastases happen early. It's the unseen spread through the bloodstream, not necessarily the initial size of the tumor. That's the most dangerous part of cancer. Regular screening programs, your mammograms, your colonoscopies, are our absolute best tools to intercept this unseen spread. They catch the polyps in the colon or the microcalcifications in the breast way before they ever have the chance to evolve into a late-stage, fatal threat.
Section 5. Breakthroughs in early detection.
Thankfully, science is giving us some incredible new tools. Now, what's really interesting about this GLP-1 data is the profound secondary effect of these medications. Recent data presented at the American Society for Clinical Oncology showed that for patients taking GLP-1s who already had cancer, their risk of the cancer spreading just absolutely plummeted. We are talking about a 50% reduction in the spread of breast cancer, 45% for lung, 40% for colon, and 33% for liver. These are unprecedented numbers, guys. We simply do not have traditional oncology drugs that can do this across the board. And building on that, that exact same class of GLP-1 drugs is also showing a 30 to 50% prevention in the recurrence of successfully treated colon cancer. So by fixing the underlying metabolic environment, we are effectively removing the compost that allows the cancer to come back. Furthermore, we now have jaw-dropping breakthroughs in testing, like the GRAIL test. This is a direct-to-consumer blood test that actually looks for floating DNA signatures of early cancer. The sources compare it to standing on a riverbank and spotting a crumpled plastic bag floating down the river. You know it shouldn't be there. Well, this test can detect the exact DNA shedding from a microscopic tumor long before it ever appears on traditional imaging. It offers an incredibly powerful biohack for anyone seeking maximum proactive defense.
Finally, Section 6. Taking control of your risk.
Okay. We have covered a lot of complex science, so let's translate that into a clear, empowering action plan for you. Step 1. Recognize the absolute necessity of cancer screening and never skip an appointment. Whether it's a colonoscopy, a mammogram, or cervical screen, prioritize it. Step 2. Explicitly tell your doctor about your blood sugar history, especially your HbA1c, when scheduling screenings. It might actually change how often you need to be checked. Step 3. Control your blood sugar rigorously. Remember, it is a direct tumor driver. And step 4, if you or a loved one develop new-onset diabetes after the age of 50, demand a conversation about pancreatic cancer screening immediately. You really have to step up and become the uncompromising CEO of your own health. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Are you focusing only on your lifespan, just the total number of years you get to live? Or are you ready to take proactive control of your health span, ensuring those years are vibrant, capable, and disease-free? Don't let medical overwhelm win. Schedule those delayed screenings because they are a biological necessity. Take ownership of your metabolic health and use this knowledge as your ultimate defense. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.